You can all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Keep the palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. How are you all doing today? Everybody's good. You're here. That's a good start. Yeah, it's difficult times out there. Anyone having a rough time? None of you? You're just here for fun, I guess, huh? Yeah. Why is it so difficult? The short story. Why so difficult? Yeah. People, right? There you go. I think you speak for everybody in the room. It's people's fault. None of you here, but everybody else. I used to joke, and I say this kind of jokingly, kind of seriously, that, everybody shows up here for challenges in their lives, whether it's, maybe friends, family, personal stuff, whatever. And people would often talk about their situations with others, and not details, because I pretty much cut it off there, but I often remind people that somewhere in some other universe, in some other class, in some other yoga, some other meditation somewhere, they're there because of you. So, yeah, people. What else? I mean, that's tough to top, but what else? Why are things so challenging? Fear? Fear of?
Just look at the people. Yeah, people. But the news media is constant bombardment of fear every day. It's like this, that.
Yeah. How often do you look at it?
Every 2 minutes. No,
Every 2 minutes.
Yeah.
That's good. You give yourself a break.
Probably once a day. No.
Yeah. Okay.
I had to cut it off.
Yeah. That's where I was going, and I'm definitely not a fan of ignoring what's going on, or pretending it's not there. But I think for some that is a real big challenge. There's a balance, because if you are engaged in it, from morning till night, all day long, which these make it possible, it can become too much. So for some to cut it back a little bit, once a day, twice a day, whatever it might be, it's different for everybody. But yeah, finding a balance so we're not bombarded with it. What else? Challenges?
Grief and letting go.
Grief and letting go. Yeah. You got some snaps in front there, so I think she's second to that. Do you want to expand on that a little bit, or?
Just losing people, just in terms of people passing away, but also just end of relationships. Things like that.
That can be scary as well, right? When things end, the change.
Yeah, psychologically, I feel no difference between.
Yeah. What else? Anything?
Things piling up.
Things piling up?
Yeah, kind of linked to not letting go, just one after the other, after the other.
Yeah, and then if we carry it all, we get triggered pretty quickly. There's a great metaphor, and then we'll start with some meditation, but there's a great metaphor of if you have a vase, right? Just imagine a clear glass vase, and in it you have water and stones and pebbles of all different sizes and sand and all that, and you pick it up and you just start shaking it, right? So what happens when you shake it to everything in it? Water, sand, pebbles, mixes all up, right? And then you set it down. What happens when you set it down? Settles. And so very often we are the vase that's just, being shook all day. And so our mind is just all the sand, all the rocks, all the pebbles. The clear water is not clear because it's mixed in with everything else. So the clear water really being the metaphor for a clear mind. And sometimes we have to just set it down a little bit, allow the rocks and sand and pebbles to settle. So then we come back to the clear mind. Make sense? Yeah. Well, as always, I'm glad I solved all your problems in the first 5 minutes, so thanks for being here. We'll start with the meditation practice. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you, right? You're not going to float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. Don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And the practice of meditation is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable if you are on a cushion. Often helps slide into the front third. On a chair or bench, however you're sitting, relaxing the shoulders, sitting up straight, hands are on the knees or on the lap. And I don't think I said hello or welcome to everybody virtually. So for those who are joining virtually, thanks for being here. I'm glad you're here. Feel free to say hello on the screen, on the chat box there. And I'll guide us as we begin the meditation. We'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, do not expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed, if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders. jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Lost in thought? Return to breath. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgments of the practice. Just sitting. Breathing. Keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. The most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. Realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment. It's not from anything I said. It's not from how we sit, hold the hands or cross the legs. It's not from the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us. He began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in and where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's what we get. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. For most of us, we don't feel this way too often. And this feeling goes away relatively quickly. So we're simply working on closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. With a mind that's steady, clear, focused. Distracted by nothing. Disturbed by no one. Not even the people. This practice is not easy. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It's direct perception into the present moment. And the present moment is very often difficult, challenging, painful. And so we learn to be with that. I mean, the first thing the Buddha said, his first teaching after being called the Buddha, the awakened one, was, life is suffering. I mean, there's no way around it. I mean, there is a way around it, but it starts with that. And I always find it fascinating that that was the first thing he taught. Life is filled with suffering. And learning to be with suffering is incredibly important. And yes, I understand the entire path and practice of the Buddhist teachings is to, dare I say, end suffering. For me as a practitioner, I don't wake up each day and think, when am I going to end my suffering? For me as a practitioner, I think, can I suffer less today than I did yesterday? But while we're working on the path to end suffering, less greed, less anger, less ignorance, more generosity, more compassion, more wisdom, that's the second noble truth. While we're working on that, let's not forget the fact that life is filled with suffering. And that can sound really depressing and miserable. So many years ago, he said, he got introduced to Buddhism like 20-something years ago. And the first book he picked up and the first like 4 pages were filled with the teaching of life is suffering. It's like, well, this Buddhist stuff sucks. And so he closed the book and 20 years went by and he picked it up 20 years later and he's like, oh, there's a second chapter to all this. Right? It's understanding the cause of that. But the first part is important. Learning to be with it. And I think that gets overlooked very often. Because we don't like suffering. We don't like discomfort. We don't like dissatisfaction. We don't like pain. So we constantly want to escape from it. But very often what we're using to escape from it isn't healthy anyways. And the things we're doing to escape from the present moment suffering are in all likelihood leading to what? More suffering. So we get stuck in this vicious cycle. So I think just sitting with it's important. When you have challenges, difficulties, moments of just, when everything's piling up on you and you just feel like it's too much, just sit. Just be with that feeling. What does this feel like? And just look at it. Because the crazy thing is nothing's actually happening to you at that moment. Just whatever story you're telling yourself in your head is just making you more and more and more miserable. But literally, like nothing is happening. I spent years as an angry, depressed kid, like 25 years. And in all of those moments, whatever I was depressed about was one single thought that I would then tell myself every moment for like 3 weeks. So of course you're sitting in it. You try to run from it, but just be with it. It'll change, it'll go away, it'll pass. Good things will happen. More suffering will come back. Good things will happen, more suffering will come back. That's life. And don't be afraid to laugh as much as possible and enjoy as much as possible. Because there is much more than just suffering. But meditation is free, Buddhist practice is free. It's sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, say, and do. That's it. So with that, I'll pause and just open up to questions. And again, for those joining virtually, glad you're here. As you are, feel free to say hello. There's a chat box somewhere on your screen. You can put some questions there. I'll do my best to respond. So we'll just open up to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice. And we'll use the rest of our brief time this evening for that.
What's the objective of sitting with a feeling?
The objective?
Yeah, are you just trying to befriend your sadness, or what is sitting with something mean?
I don't know. But if you try it, you'll find out. Right? Yeah, I don't, for me, Buddhist practice, when I hear objective, and you may or may not have meant it this way, but when I hear objective around this practice, very often that word could be interchanged with the word goal. And this practice isn't about setting goals in that way, right? So the question of what's the objective or what's the goal, to me, and please, I could be wrong, but it sounds like, okay, well, what's the point, right? That's how I hear it. What am I going to get from this? Nothing. I can't answer that for you because I'm not suggesting that with some objective or goal in mind. You ever been really angry? You ever done anything when you're really angry? How's that work out for you?
Generally not the best.
Generally not the best, right? Maybe for a moment we feel like it's a good thing because we got what we wanted, but really we just created more anger, more mess, most likely. I'm just generalizing here. So using that as an example, when we feel anger, lots of options, but two very clear ones are act on it or sit with it. So I'm not suggesting sit with anger because all of a sudden your anger is going to be this pleasant thing or that you're going to solve anything or you're going to figure anything out. But not acting on anger and just sitting with it is very often a very wise choice. But we don't know that until we sit with it. Years ago, I tell the story every so often, but there was a kid that was doing meditations every week at KPBS, and he's a 20-year-old college kid, and he was an intern there, and he'd been as a student, and 3 weeks into meditation practice, he came on a Monday and said, "Hey Jeff, I think I figured out how this stuff can help me." And I said, "How's that?" And he said, "Well, I was at a party Friday night, and this guy was talking to my girlfriend, and I got really angry, and I realized I was going to get into a fight, and I realized I should take some deep breaths and walk away." I said, "That's great. What happened?" And he said, "I hit him." And I looked at him and I said, "Congratulations, that's progress." And he looked at me like, "Progress, Jeff? I got into a fight. I hit the guy." I said, "Yes, but 4 weeks ago, you never would have stopped to think there was another choice. You'd have just hit the guy without even realizing, oh, I could stop, I could slow down, I could take some deep breaths, and I could create space to possibly make a different choice." He didn't do it that time. But he learned that if he just sits with it, lots of things can happen. So, I don't know if that's helpful at all, but yeah. Other questions? Yeah.
So one of my big takeaways since coming here is, the teaching and, the encouragement of looking at the positive, counting your blessings, that sort of stuff. And, I won't go into specifics, but lately, I've just been kind of getting pummeled. And I can go through waves of, sadness, depression, or anger, or whatever, about these things. And then when I, get my head straight again and I can see the many, many blessings in my life and all of that, I end up finding myself on the other end feeling guilty for even having these feelings to begin with, because I know I'm in a better situation than millions of people.
Yeah.
Like literally. And so I'm in this cycle, I guess, to it.
Yeah.
And I don't know what you can tell me about dealing with that.
Sure. So there's a Buddhist practice teaching I love, which is called the middle path. And it's all about finding balance. And this could be with anything in our lives. So as I'm sharing this, you can all, relate to it in any way you want, but it's not just about thoughts. It could be about thoughts. It could be about, how we consume. It could be about how we speak. It could be about, the clothes we wear, the food we buy, the cars we drive, the houses we live in, whatever it might be, finding a balance. And this really comes from the Buddhist practice and teaching of understanding that this emaciated Buddha, which has been our Buddha for 17 years, this was him not finding balance, starving himself to death, living on 1 grain of rice a day, and thinking that was the way to end suffering. And so it's called the emaciated Buddha, but it's before he was called the Buddha. He was still just Siddhartha Gautama, the dude roaming around India trying to figure out how to end his suffering. And he was attached. They all were attached, at least the kind of yogis he was with, thinking that if they overcame attachment to physical form, they would awaken. So that's why they ate 1 grain of rice a day. So super extreme, right? Now, the flip side of that is before he left for that life, he was a prince. He had all the wealth, all the riches, everything you could imagine, had everything. So went from that life to this life. 2 extremes. He eventually settled on a balance for him. Now the balance for him as, a homeless, wandering, begging monk is quite an extreme for us, but it was a balance for him. So what I heard you say is two really drastic extremes of misery, depression, this sucks, to tremendous gratitude, and then feeling like, you know, really bad for being grateful. It sounds like, huh?
Like for not seeing, being
Yeah.
able to focus on it more.
Yeah.
And remembering it more.
So and that's why I think of the middle path, is it sounds like there's just a balance there that's a little bit out of whack, like, yeah, you're gonna have, you don't do meditation or Buddhist stuff for 6 months and all of a sudden, like, life is simple. It actually gets harder for a while before it gets easier. I truly believe that. And I share that very often. Probably not as often as I should. But very often this practice makes things more difficult at first. And why is that? Why do you think?
Because there's the self-reflection that we avoid in general.
Yeah.
And, definitely brings a lot to the surface.
Yes. And so that's painful. It's like, oh yeah, I'm not this, or I am this, or, so we go through that self-exploration, as you said. But once we get through that, we find a balance of understanding that, yes, I'm going to have difficult, challenging, depressing days.
So how long does that usually take, by the way?
Because you've been at this like 4 months right now, so it should be done.
I should be through by now.
Clearly. Another week and you're good. Yeah. Give it to May. I think by May you'll be fine. I wish that there was an answer to that. And I'm trying to go gentle here because I don't want to scare you, right? The Buddha only had like thousands and thousands and thousands of lifetimes before being born as Siddhartha Gautama, before ending in suffering. So I don't know how many times you've been around, me, not that many, and I got a long way to go. So my suggestion is, same thing kind of back to my thought of, objective and goals and things like that, is I feel very confident, comfortable saying this to you directly. Your problem is you want this now.
I want to breathe.
You want to breathe, so
Yeah.
breathe. But breathe without the expectation of wanting anything else. You don't just want to breathe. You want to breathe and you want all the shit to go away. You want all your problems to be gone. You want all the people to stop doing what you don't like them doing.
I would settle for one big one going away.
One what?
One big one.
Yeah,
going away.
well,
I would settle for that one.
Don't. Because that big one will change. And it'll be somebody else. The problem isn't the one person. The problem is you. And I say that to you directly with all the love and compassion in the world, because you're not much different than I am. And that's what I needed somebody to tell me, that finally woke me up and said, I got to stop blaming everybody or anybody. It's me. My greed, my anger, my ignorance, and my inability.
Reminder.
Say again?
I said thank you for the
Yeah.
reminder.
I kind of just ignored everybody else right now and just went right there. Because I've known you for 4 months, so, or whatever it's been. But back to the balance, the middle path, right? So, but in all seriousness, that was all serious too. But the timing of this stuff, working on balance, right? When we have depressing days, those are going to come. And then we know, well, today's a depressing day. This is miserable. This sucks. Be with that. And know that, okay, there's going to be other days. I'm going to have good days and I feel grateful. Don't hate yourself for it. You know why? Because you're going to go back to having the crappy days.
See.
Right? So when your gratitude is like so high and you're in this like little arrogant, peaceful Buddhist gratitude phase, just remember it's going to come crashing down on you. That'll humble you a little bit. And then when it comes crashing down there, you'd be like, okay, well, I'm going to go back over here some days. And when does that all end? Never. That's your life. That's your whole life. That is every day of your life. The danger is, and that's why when I joke about it, but also serious, danger is when we put a time limit on it. And then we lack, again, I'm not suggesting you, but just in general here, when we lack patience, that's a huge Buddhist teaching. The 6 paramitas, the bodhisattva practice, generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, wisdom. And very often the thing or the person that we lack the most patience with is ourselves. So we do this stuff for 6 months, you know. I've been at this stuff every day, every single day. Can you do like, what are the little, who has kids and those, what are they? Earmuffs, right? Can you do earmuffs for a minute, right? I've been at this every single day for 20 years. It doesn't get any easier. And I've accomplished nothing. So just keep working at it. It's not a goal. It's not something to accomplish or gain. You will face difficulties and challenges and problems your entire life. Can you be with them? Or are you going to try to fix everybody around you and just make them be how you want them to? Because most people have been doing that long enough, and that doesn't work. That was fun. Other thoughts? Yeah. Yeah.
Keeping in the same,
Yeah.
why not, let's keep.
Why
going.
not?
Okay, so, anger,
Yeah.
holding on to anger, I feel like I am holding on to some anger and I'm waiting for to make it real simple, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
And I know it's not the right way of thinking, but I feel like, okay, once I get that, then the anger will go away. But recently I'm coming to realize, no, it's not gonna go away unless I do the work. And it doesn't matter if that person says I'm sorry or not.
Mhm.
Am I getting that kind of?
Yeah, no, I get it. So a lot of that is tied into, and you said it really, like midway through, for me, it kind of popped into my head. But the anger, very often, and I'm just suggesting this, very often that anger that arises and the waiting for the apology, we're very often not even angry, and I think I heard you say this, we're not even angry at the thing anymore that occurred. We're just angry because we don't have the apology yet. Like, in all likelihood, whatever happened that you wanted an apology for is probably not life-threatening, nor, like, in the grand scheme of things.
Or in the past.
Or in the past, right, whatever it is. It's then we hold on to the resentment because the person hasn't given us what we want to hear yet. Both of those are incredibly toxic and unhealthy. And again, you answered, I think, in your sharing, it wasn't even a question, just in your sharing, you recognize that, yeah, the work is yours. And this is where I always default to the teachings of the Heart Sutra, where the practice is to go beyond expectations. And so much of our life, our day, our past, is about expecting things or, you know, apology, whatever it might be. And so this practice is, and I'm not suggesting that, you know, if we're in a relationship, for example, that if one person is being a certain way and it's unhealthy, there's no Buddhist teaching that says just to be with it. You know, you have every right to just get up and walk away. But the practice is to go beyond the expectation, understanding that they are dealing with their own suffering and their own trauma and their own difficulties and their own pain. And that's what got reflected out towards us, caused us to suffer. But it's not about us, it's actually their pain that's being expressed. All we have to do is think about any time we do things that hurt somebody else. It's just our anger, our pain, our sadness. And then we run into people. And they're like, oh, hi, nice to meet you. And you're like, here, let me dump all of my anger and pain on you for the next 7 years. You know? So if we can begin to, when I say separate, I don't mean like in an avoidance way, but if we can separate this
Ourselves.
our sense of self, our ego, our pride, if we can separate ourselves from these situations and again, this gets into Buddhist teachings on non-self, if we can separate ourselves from this, the person or that situation or whoever it might be has nothing to do with anything. Because we're still tied into wanting them to be a certain way or do a certain thing. Super difficult to do all this stuff. You know? So, yeah. Does that help? Yeah. Go ahead, one more, and then
Okay.
we'll close.
So much of what you do that helps me as a teacher, Jeff, you know that. Your example, this holding on, it just blows my mind how much of it is a conscious decision. And I come in here and I don't want to change. I don't want to do the one thing that you're suggesting to do to relieve the suffering. I just want to feel good about what I'm doing. And I'm in front of the kids, and they're doing the same thing. And there's some depth to my teaching because I'm going through this practice with you. And we're doing it together in the classroom. And it's just an amazing journey that I've been on. But when you said, hold on, those words just triggered that.
Yeah.
Understanding that. You know, I come in here with some stuff. I said people for a reason. And I want to hold on to that. Seriously, I do it with my resentment and my anger. I want to hold on to it. I just want to feel good about it.
Yeah.
And it's not happening.
And we'll justify why we're holding on to it. And this teaching, to me, this practice isn't going that justification. The justification we give, it's not even that justification isn't valid. That's not the point. When people do things that we are harmed by, this practice is not suggesting that what they've done is good or right or okay. It's asking us, how can we be okay with what they have done? Because we are the ones that are continuing to suffer. They are not. We are. We're carrying that burden, that pain, that hurt. And that's difficult. Yeah.
Hey Jeff, how are you?
Hi.
So I have a relative who every time I see her complains about her husband, but just for the last 25 years, he hasn't changed. And I said, well, if change is so easy, then why don't you? And she doesn't know where to go with that. But when I heard about waiting for an apology, where my mind went, ooh, I owe one too. It made me think about when you say, in the morning, did you get up to feed yourself? Did you think who else is hungry? If I'm waiting for someone to apologize, maybe someone's waiting for me too. That's something I could do.
For sure.
That's where my mind went.
Yeah.
Is there anyone I need to apologize? Sort of like the 12 steps, you know?
Yeah.
Take an inventory. But it's so easy to apologize, then why am I not doing that?
Right.
Just,
Yeah.
That was helpful.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that, just to echo what Joe said about, for those who have never heard me say this, but often I'll talk about how when we wake up in the morning, we wake up, whatever our morning is, and then we realize, okay, we're hungry, so we go to have breakfast. Nothing wrong with this. You're not like a bad person for wanting breakfast. But the example was, how many of us think when we're eating breakfast about all the people that aren't able to eat breakfast at that moment? And do we ever stop and think about that? And what you're sharing about the apology, all of that, it's really a beautiful practice in anything we think about, no matter what comes up. Our conditioned normal way of thinking, which we have conditioned for a long time, if we can pause at each moment and ask ourselves, what would be a different way to think about this situation? Be amazed at what might come to us for everything. It can get really annoying if you do that, but it's, you could do it once an hour or once a day or something like that. But we have just adopted so readily just a way of thinking that we have built into our mind, into our consciousness, that we just reinforce day in and day out. And very rarely do we stop and realize that same mind is the mind that is causing you suffering. So how can we change that mind? And I don't know, maybe that's the objective. Yeah. And we'll close. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was scratching my nose, but
Oh, sorry. I saw.
I feel like what you described maybe fits the definition of Sankara dukkha very well, which is what we all try to extinguish.
Yeah. Yeah. The dukkha, the suffering, the discomfort, the angst, dissatisfaction that we sit with is very broad, from extreme to little annoyances. And it always fascinates me how little annoyances can cause us so much suffering, like the stupidest little things. We'll just torture ourselves for like 3 weeks over it. And share with everybody else how tortured we are over the stupidest little things, because they all want to hear about it, I'm sure. But yeah, the suffering is, it's there. Yeah. Anything else before we close? It wasn't as late as I thought it was, so we were already past 8. Everybody good? All right, so we'll join palms, we'll close. And the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. May they all be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. So before you all head out, we have a few announcements from our Dharma Bum host, Robin. Thanks, Robin.
Hi, everyone. I'm Robin. I'm your host for this evening. Just wanted to share a few things about the Dharma Bum Temple and what we do here. We opened this temple about 16 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They are simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice with others. Almost every night we have different classes led by people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone battling addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 5 p.m. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We also have a lending library. If you see a book you like, please feel free to borrow it and then bring it back whenever you're done with it. Please straighten out your seat or cushion before you head out, and we thank you for being here. We wish you well, and we hope to see you all again.
Thanks, Rob.